Let me, before I read the statement of the Secretary General, recognize in absentia Honorable Rebecca Miano, Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, Republic of Kenya, for hosting us. His Excellency Ambassador Albert Muchanga, Commissioner for Economic Development, Trade, Tourism, Industry and Minerals of the African Union Commission. His Excellency Mr. Clever Gatete, Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Africa, who is ably represented by Dr. Stephen Kalingi, Director for Regional Integration and Trade. His Excellency Mr. Stephen Jackson, the UN Resident Coordinator in Kenya. His Excellency Dr. Jide Martins Okeke, who is the Coordinator, Regional Program for Africa, UNDP, Regional Bureau for Africa. I'm happy to recognize His Excellency Yahya Bella, who is the Deputy Minister and Head of Egyptian Commercial Services. We have distinguished ambassadors and high commissioners representing different member states here in this meeting, distinguished senior trade officials and heads of delegations, representatives of regional economic communities who are here present, the representatives of the private sector. I have seen my brother Kebo representing the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, Commerce and Industry. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Allow me to start by wishing all of you Happy New Year 2024 and welcome you to this important gathering. On behalf of His Excellency Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General for the African Continental Free Trade Area, I would like to extend my deep appreciation to Honorable Miano for hosting this important conference and also extending these facilities to the delegates here in attendance. This demonstrates Kenya's dedication and commitment and unwavering support to the AfCFTA and its implementation process. The Secretary General requested me to convey his warm greetings to all of you, Your Excellencies, and also his apology for not being with us today due to other important commitments. Albert Muchanga has mentioned there is a meeting of the PRC going on, and all heads of organs and African Union Commission are compelled to be in that meeting. And later this afternoon, he will also travel to attend the World Economic Forum in Davos. So he requested me to be here and read his keynote speech, which I'm going to read verbatim. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the effective implementation of the AfCFTA agreement is a gradual process which requires, first of all, the involvement of the state parties at national level by domesticating the provisions of the agreement and putting in place institutional and strategic mechanisms enabling national stakeholders, in particular the private sector, to be at the heart of actions setting the agreement in motion. It then requires the involvement of regional economic communities at regional level, which develop strategies to federate national measures, mobilize regional partners and stakeholders, and facilitate trading within regional free trade areas. Allow me to recall and quote Article 5 of the agreement establishing the AfCFTA on the principles, on the guiding principles, which states, I quote, regional economic communities' free trade areas are the building blocks for the AfCFTA. End of quote. The process can then escalate to the continental level, where we will witness seamless intra-African trade with all state parties and regional economic communities using their operational tools that are developed for the implementation of the AfCFTA agreement. We have a number of AfCFTA implementation tools, and they're increasing on a daily basis. You've heard of Pan-African Payments and Settlement System. We have established the AfCFTA Adjustment Fund. We have the Guided Trade Initiative. We have the AfCFTA Rules of Origin Manual. We have the e-tariff book. We have different platforms that are coming up, the Smart AfCFTA, the Africa Trade Gateway. You've heard of the Africa Trade Observatory, which is being led by the African Union Commission. So all those tools are being developed to ensure implementation of the AfCFTA. So we have to support them and also utilize them, especially the private sector. Cognizant of this process, we've heard from Stephen, the heads of state and government of the African Union at the 31st ordinary session, which was held in July 2018 in Nouakchott, Mauritania. They committed to establish national committees on the AfCFTA to ensure meaningful participation of all stakeholders and come up with national AfCFTA and boosting intra-African trade strategies. And this conference is here to take stock of all those strategies that have been developed, to learn from each other and share experience. This decision constitutes not only the legal basis for the work that has been undertaken thus far by state parties and regional economic communities in establishing national implementation committees and developing national and regional implementation strategies with the support of relevant partners, some of which are here present in the room, but also the rationale for convening such an important conference. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have been advised that to date, we have 19 state parties that have established their national implementation committees, and 6 of them have identified those existing structures to be used either at regional or multilateral trading purposes when they negotiate within regional economic communities or at WTO. And there are others that are in the process of establishing those national structures, and the AfCFTA Secretariat is continuously working to support all the state parties to ensure those national structures are established. We've also heard from Dr. Stephen that we have 45 AfCFTA implementation strategies that have been developed so far, of course, with assistance of the partners, and in particular, the UNECA. Regional economic communities such as ECOWAS, ECAS, East African community have also developed their regional AfCFTA implementation strategies, and those others that have not done so, they are in the process of completing their regional AfCFTA implementation strategies. Developing those strategies and establishment of national and regional institutional arrangement for AfCFTA implementation, and these national implementation committees go hand in hand. In fact, the formation of national implementation committees is one of the key implementing strategies in most of the strategy papers that we have seen that have been developed. So you cannot implement the AfCFTA strategy without having a structure that is established either at national level or at regional level. Also, we have learned that from our AfCFTA Guided Trade Initiative, it is almost impossible for state parties to trade under the AfCFTA regime in the absence of national implementation committees at national level. At the Secretariat, we are continuously providing technical assistance and capacity building, particularly in the formation and the operationalization of the national implementation strategies. National implementation committees. This is very important for two reasons. One, it will be difficult for those 45 strategies and many others that are being developed to be implemented without having a coordinating structure. Secondly, it will be difficult to coordinate implementation of the AfCFTA at national level without having a government structure that will bring together all the stakeholders, either from government, from private sector, from business community, from civil society, to come together. That's the importance of having AfCFTA national implementation committees. Those who've been involved in negotiations, you know how it's difficult to coordinate the national position if you do not have a structure that is established to bring together all existing stakeholders at national level. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to inform you that the last meeting of the AfCFTA Council of Ministers that was held in Dar es Salaam in December last year, honorable ministers of trade decided to establish a committee of focal persons of the AfCFTA national implementation committees. We are now moving a step ahead to have a continental coordination mechanisms for those national implementation committees as one of the AfCFTA recognized institutions. The objective of this committee is to discuss, monitor, and exchange best practices on AfCFTA implementation, as well as their national strategies thereof, on a regular basis. Accordingly, we are developing the terms of reference and work plan of this committee of focal persons. Given that focal persons of national implementation committees oversee the overall activities of their subcommittees involved in the implementation at national level, their gathering, input, and experience sharing will be one of the key AfCFTA institutional meetings in informing the level of implementation, opportunities created, and challenges faced in accelerating and driving AfCFTA implementation to the next level. From now on, I have the feeling that this initiative of having a peer running community is going to be formalized into that institutional meeting that has been established by the Council of Ministers. And this will give us leverage because any outcome of this meeting will be officially transmitted to the Council of Ministers for appropriate decision and eventually to the Assembly of Heads of State and Government. In this regard, we plan to convene 2 meetings of the National Implementation Committee focal persons this year, and perhaps going forward, we will have this conference be conducted under this ad hoc committee meeting. And as one of the institutional meetings of the AfCFTA, we expect the committee to develop its own dynamism from each meeting it conducts. The outcome of this conference will therefore come at a perfect timing as to providing key and insightful recommendations for consideration of the Committee of National Implementation Committees focal persons and onward submission to the Council of Ministers. Excellencies, with many national implementation committees established and national implementation strategies validated, countries embarked on trading under the AfCFTA preferential regime, mainly through the Guided Trade Initiative. This initiative allowed state parties to self-assess their state of readiness in implementing the agreement and highlighted areas of interventions and more improvement and collaboration. In this process, and considering the diversity and ground reality of African economies, peer review and peer learning are critical to monitor the level of readiness of countries to fully implement the AfCFTA agreement. That is why the main purpose of this conference is to provide a platform for information and experience sharing, for peer learning on the implementation of validated national AfCFTA implementation strategies. This will enable to create among state parties and RECs common synergies on trade cooperation through inclusive interventions towards the effective implementation of the agreement. Allow me then to salute UNECA and UNDP for working with us on this initiative, which is in line with the acceleration of the AfCFTA implementation, the theme of the year 2023. And we believe this theme will always remain relevant for the AfCFTA, as it will continue to be a priority which we will spare no effort. Excellencies, I'm glad to stand before you today, more so because of the delegates here in attendance have been part of the AfCFTA journey since the beginning of negotiations in 2015. I stand here in awe of our collaborative work as we now are almost at the end of the last 2 protocols, the protocol on digital trade and the protocol on women and youth in trade, which are going to be submitted for consideration and adoption to the Assembly this year, in February 2024. As I conclude, allow me to recall how important this conference is, as it not only allows us to learn from one another and find synergies in our work to advance our efforts towards full utilization of the agreement, but also allows us to set priorities for the year 2024 as a collective. In the next 3 days, we will have the opportunity to engage, network, and come up with strategies that will guide our work going forward. I would like then to thank all of you for your time, and on behalf of the Secretary General, His Excellency Wamkele Mene, I would like to officially declare open this conference on AfCFTA implementation strategies. I thank you very much for your kind attention.